I'm going to turn the sound down because we're now live. I've got some footage playing in the background at the minute. Welcome to our next scheduled event. This is a sit down with Thom, and with me I've got Captain Vaj of TSN Viper and Thom Robertson as well, creator of Artemis. Hello.
Hello, Xavier. Thanks for having me on.
All right. So we've got like a full hour to go at this. So we've been sat here for the past like 10 minutes, and I've literally been biting my tongue because I've got so many questions. Thom's got some visuals to show us as well that will be actual visuals. They're not a video like Vaj thought they were. So we'll be transferring over so that you can see those visuals, and then we've got loads of questions lined up. I'll be honest with you, I've got loads of questions of my own. Vaj got loads of questions as his own, but we've also got a ton from the community that we've been collecting together since this morning. So we're going to start pitching those across to Thom. But I think first of all, Thom, do you want to say anything to open us up with? Anything that you want to tell anybody at the moment?
Well, as always, I really appreciate everybody. I really appreciate the fans for Artemis. I mean, honestly, you guys are the reason Artemis has been such an amazingly long-lived game. I can go into a lot more detail about that since I've been really ruminating on it since it's 11 years old, if you can believe it. Well, I think almost 11 years old as a piece of software. But I want to reiterate how much I appreciate everybody who participates in the community and who enjoys my game, and how much your feedback and your enthusiasm for the game means to me.
Yeah, I think there's a couple of different online communities now. I know the Eastern Front has been doing a lot of games. I hopped into their server as well, I think. There's the USN, is that another one? There's TSN RP community, obviously, and there's also the Canadian division as well. So we've a couple of people as well, I think, have been playing it since the very first version. I remember I started when it was version 1.5, and I remember it being upgraded to version 2. So yeah, and we were saying like I was awarded my 8th service ribbon with the TSN, which means that the TSN's been running for 8 years. All right.
Really amazing.
So, shall we jump into some questions then?
I'm happy to.
That's at the time.
All right, Vaj, you said you had a couple of questions that you thought would be good starters.
Yeah, just a couple of random questions that people have. First of all, Adam Parr has a quick question here. What's your favorite piece of jerky? You've been doing this series for a while now. Let's go ahead and get that one off the table.
Yeah, of course, everyone has been locked down throughout the world, and just one of the weird, foolish little side creative things that I did during 2020 was I made little YouTube videos of me reviewing beef jerky. It was dumb and silly, and it was advertised as such from the beginning.
Indeed.
But since I had to actually fill in time, a lot of the videos became discussions about game design and game development because that's what I've been thinking about all my life.
Imagine that.
Yeah, so I've had a lot of fun with it, but I've also been kind of bemused by the results and the connection and things. And of course, every episode I reach out and say, leave me a comment on YouTube, leave me a comment on Facebook, let me know what you think, let me know what I could do better. And Adam Para has been my one regular commenter.
Indeed.
So basically, every single episode, and what Adam Para had to say last episode, which I don't mind. It's a lot of fun and very sweet. And Adam actually even sent me some jerky to review at one point or another.
Oh, nice.
Yeah, and again, that whole thing is absolutely for no reason other than to just kind of reach out and ping the world and let everybody know we're all still okay.
Oh, right. I must admit, I don't think I've ever had any jerky, to be honest. I'll have to try that
So,
next time
I
I'm in
grew
the
up
US.
I grew up in Texas, and there's a lot of beef jerky in Texas.
So, Thom, what is your favorite piece of jerky?
Oh well, if you're asking me about my in-depth reviews and my analysis of jerky after about 60 episodes of that silly jerky vlog, I would actually have to say Stroyo's Mild. There's a brand named Strolos or Stroyos, um, and they have extremely bold and flavorful jerky as craft jerky goes. But I'm not a big fan of hot. I'm not a big fan of super spicy stuff. Turns out their mild stuff happens to be about my speed, but still extremely flavorful and bold. So the winner for all of that is that Stroyo's mild beef jerky.
That's gonna have to somehow make it into our Artemis cannon. That's gonna perhaps like a shipment of jerky is stolen by the Krellians and we're gonna retrieve it. Definitely going for that. There's a mission script idea if there ever was one.
Indeed.
Next scripting competition idea. Brilliant. All right. Well, I think there's a lot of people obviously wanting to know about Artemis 3, and I'm sure that's what people are itching. I mean, we've got 13 people watching at the minute. I'm sure that's what they're going to be itching to hear about. So let's see. How are you getting on with Artemis 3? How far along is it? I think that's what a lot of people want to know.
So it's a tough question to answer, but that doesn't mean I'm afraid of answering it. It's just not simple. I can't say 68%. It doesn't work that way, and I'm really not so certain about it. But I will say this: I've got the 3D world, I've got the spaceships, I've got a lot of other parts of the universe, and the ships drive around. And I actually just got the beams in; they're mostly in anyway. Missiles have been in for a while, but they don't actually do anything dangerous to anything. They just fly out and go in weird directions to let me test things. So basically, if it were a car I was building, the engine would be in, but it would still be in no way operable as a car. It's not a complete game. I mean, there was so much to rebuild from the ground up. And so I have, and as a result, a lot of pieces are in, but they're certainly not complete. Like the network layer is working, but has a ways to go. The user interface is working, but has a long way to go. The weapons are there, but obviously they don't actually hurt anybody yet. So I just have to keep working on it, and so on. There's a lot of work that has been done, and a lot of work still to be done.
So it's kind of developing all these features that are going in to put the complete game together bit by bit instead of where you don't go one step at a time. Do you end up with like 4 different things being developed at the same time? Is that kind of how it works?
So I know you've got a million other questions to get to, but can we go deep in this?
Go for it, yeah. I don't think anyone was going to complain if we overrun, to be honest.
All right, well, here's the deal. In summer of 2010, my muse said, make this game. And it had been a game idea that had been kicking around in my head since I was 18 years old. It was just a crazy old idea that I just found myself, I've got 3D spaceships, I've got a network code, I've got sounds and explosions, I've got particles, I've got all of these pieces. I now theoretically could assemble that old idea from my teenage years. And my muse said, do it now, do it now. And so that is the mindset I was in when I was creating the game in the first place in summer 2010. As a result, it was very much damn the torpedoes. It was very much a kind of a slapdash, throw it in and get it working later kind of development philosophy, so that I could get the game done as quickly as possible, at least to the point where it would actually do what it was supposed to do. And I'm honestly very glad I did from that point of view, because As soon as I actually had it working and started talking to other people about it, they got it. They were like, a bridge simulator? So we could work together just like on Star Trek? Yes, I'm in. Unlike many games of mine, which were hard sells and very difficult to explain to people, the concept of Artemis is just magical. How people's eyes light up when you just talk to them and say, it's this cool game where you can work on a spaceship together. And so it was that I quickly slapped a bunch of code together to make it work. I have, of course, been paying for that for the next 10 years, as any engineer would tell you. But also, it was very much a question of I didn't know what I didn't know. I certainly had no intention in my head of making, say, a scripting language when I first started out in summer 2010. That came later. A lot of things, massive amount of things, came later. And so, also, if you have any knowledge of programming or engineering, that kind of accretion, that kind of build it as you go kind of thing, is also something to look down on, or at least to be worried about. So, going into producing Artemis 3, I knew it had to be a ground-up rewrite because the technology in Artemis 2 was so incredibly old, and the decisions I had made about the basic substructure of Artemis 2 were decisions I had made 10 years ago. And I, as a game developer and as a programmer, I've certainly moved. I've certainly changed and learned better in 10 years. I hope I have.
Great.
So I have the kind of the double weight of I've got to do it all again from scratch. And this time I know exactly all the things I'm going to be doing. So building Artemis 3 is a radically different experience from building Artemis 2. And I don't mean that in a good or bad way, but it certainly has its good and bad points. I think from the good point of view, and the fundamental good point of view is, I've had a lot of time to think about how to do it better. So I would hope I can do it better, and I know how to do it better, and I've got much better ideas about how this part is supposed to work and about how that part is supposed to work. But that also means that I was kind of on the hook for building a lot of substructure before I could put anything on my screen that was pretty at all. There's a lot of behind the scenes code that goes into the complexity that I'm building.
So do you know on the forums when you released that test version that was very different, that was testing a particular part of the program, wasn't it? Which was it testing the network code?
You may be thinking about a game, kind of I don't know what
it was like a submarine game, I think you said it was. Yeah.
Yes, very much so. And yes, the answer to that is yes. It was there to test network code. It was there to test a little bit of other things as well. The other thing, when I actually did kind of put it together, was it tested something that was very low level, very invisible, and very important: the bounding volume hierarchy, which is basically its code, but what it boils down to is it's much more efficient at letting your spaceship know who's close to you and who's far from you.
That's important.
It's very, very important. It's fundamental to the game itself. And practically everything in the game has to say, what's close to me and what's far from me, because I want to test collision against what's close to me.
Mm-hmm.
And if it's too far from me, I don't want to shoot at it. I don't want to think about it.
So, did you get a lot of feedback from the community with that? Because I know you released it on the forums. Was the feedback that you got from that useful for helping kind of move it on or test it out?
No. I would say that the best feedback I got from it were the limited play testing sessions that I had directly with you guys and with people that I tested it with, in real time.
I see. Yeah, I suppose you'd be able to see it in action, and I imagine that you've got some kind of debug in the background, so you can see what's going on with the code as it runs.
Exactly. So, and that certainly gave me, good feedback, enough to proceed. I'd actually done some previous tests that were problematic, and I was afraid that those bugs had chased me to this new code. That proved that it had not, and I could go forward.
So on that, one of our very first questions that we've got on this list, and I think one that somebody posed but everybody's asking, is what kind of new features can we expect from Artemis 3 compared to Artemis 2, and what kind of things are staying and what kind of things are changing?
Okay, well,
that'll probably be a fairly long answer there, but
it's okay. And it sounds like three questions, which I'm happy to answer. So help remind me that I'm working on 3 here. So the thing is that most of the time that in 2020 that I was writing the lowest level of Artemis, the answer to what features am I going to have were anything, because all this low level stuff is just foundational. Anything theoretically could go on top of it. So that didn't really narrow the focus for me. But I could tell you in terms of what we're keeping, the one thing that I'm absolutely desperate to keep is, of course, what I think is the best part of Artemis, which is that feeling of easily sitting down at the kind of the virtual seat of the bridge and being able to participate and play with your crewmates. I don't want to lose that. I don't want anybody to say, after all the hard work that I put into Artemis 3, that Artemis 2 was a lot more fun. Now, it's believable in the short term because Artemis 2, as you guys are showing me right now, is such a long-lived project, and you guys have put your own work into it, and you've extended it so much, and you've got your own mods and things. It would be stupid of me to ask you to throw that all away instantly. Especially since my intent is to release Artemis 3 before it has every single feature that the modern version of Artemis 2 has. Just because, again, Artemis 2 is such a big deal and has so much over so much time. So we're not going to turn the key and turn off Artemis 2 anytime soon. But there's a lot that could be changed for the better, I think, in Artemis 2. And so I think in terms of what we're keeping is absolutely above all else that feeling of jumping into a bridge and getting into the action. Mike subsequently funnily called it time to explosion. And he was right. He was critiquing other games that made you go through a lot more hoops and spend a lot more times before you could actually shoot at an enemy ship. And that's just basic game design, in my opinion. But I agree with him completely. I don't want to lose that. I want people to be able to jump in and be fighting Kralians right away.
Yeah, I suppose that's the thing, because we've played for so long, we end up taking other avenues down, but you can still literally just go, right, solo game, off we go, let's blow something up. And the actual interface itself is quite intuitive. Once you get into it, you kind of understand how it works. You've got sliders that'll turn you, you've got one that'll do your warp, and then on weapons you click and you fire, and you can pick it up without any kind of guides. And then I think the layer that groups have added on top of it is, how do you best approach this combat, or what weapons will do what? And I know we've got some, we have orders that we have down to a T, so we say an order and everybody knows what they're doing and which weapons to fire and how to approach it and everything. So you can get into that from the simple things of a dead simple interface that's easy to pick up, all the way up to really complex tactics and strategy that are trigger happy weapons officers that we have as well. We're working out what's the quickest way of making something blow up. I'm saying no names, Yui.
So kind of moving on to a little bit more, I suppose, practical discussion. What things have you already added in terms of features that perhaps Artemis 2 doesn't have?
So at a foundational level, the network layer is completely different. The old Artemis 2 code was TCP only, and was left over from older code, older than 2010. By that I mean that I had kicking around that was, it worked, so it was good for its time. But it's definitely got its issues, as anyone who's played Artemis would know. So I moved to, let me see specifically, a library called ENET, ENET, as a UDP network layer. And I built a network class on top of ENET's UDP only network layer, precisely so that I could get that more distributed, robust network solution. So that, because you guys have been very clear, all the fans have been very clear, they want more spaceships, they want more connections, they want more than 8 ships, dang it. And I'm not going to do that unless I have
David Trin.
Well, whoever, the bottom line is that I am currently working with ENET as a foundational UDP network layer, and I've got something built on top of it, and it seems to be working great so far. We will see as we test it out and bang out the rest of the dev. And that's a fundamental difference. Another fundamental difference has to do with the graphics. It's a migration from DirectX 9 to DirectX 11. But it's more foundational than that, because I took the opportunity to completely rewrite the graphics engine. So it works in a different way, it's encapsulated in a different way. And then on top of that, for the longest time, I programmed in a very so-called object-oriented C++ paradigm. And one of their drawbacks to object-oriented, a lot of the bloom has come off the rose in terms of object-oriented programming in the last 20 years. And so, and one of the things that kind of tripped us up in that regard was the idea of so-called headless servers. Because when I first started doing Artemis, I didn't think of anybody would run a server in a rack with no graphical video card. And so it was easy for me to set up all my objects in my space game with a simple draw function and tick function. So the tick function would make everything go, and the draw function would draw everything. That's how you do it with a simple game. That's not necessarily, it doesn't work for a game where you want to split off the logic from the graphics so much that you could build a headless server or whatever. So these are all things I had to wrestle with in terms of completely redesigning the architecture. And a lot of that design and that redesign has happened. But your question, if I can pop the stack a bit, was about what has actually been written. And in terms of that, the layout, the underlying layout of how ships are and what they are and what an asteroid is and what its values are, has been built and is working. So I have a simulation object that contains everything and knows where everything is, and I have a separate drawing object called Render Manager, which takes responsibility for drawing all the ships and drawing all the asteroids. So this is the kind of thing that I wish I could say that, oh, here's this big new feature that you've never seen before. A lot of the work that I've been doing since I've started hard work on Artemis 3 has been much more low level. But there are things that are different, that are distinctive, and I think one of the things I'd like to show you a little glimpse of is a new paradigm for the user interface that will give everybody a lot more flexibility and modability at the large level of building mods, but also at the small level of customizing your user interface to exactly the way you like it.
See, I know that this is...
fan of this.
Yeah, I know this has been talked about quite a bit, to be honest with you, about the fact that the interface for the user can be changed and tweaked and set up how you want and influenced. I mean, we were saying earlier about the TSN sandbox script, how you added the game master thing, then you added buttons, and that kind of gave us the first user interface that you could actually change and tweak, and the things that you can do with that interface is using the just mission scripting. I've done absolutely tons with it. So to be able to do it with in an even more extensive way is going to be very, very interesting.
Well, and we'll see how it goes. I mean, it's still, I want to give everybody what they had in Artemis too.
Definitely.
Sure, yeah.
But I also see these are changes that came about because of limitations of Artemis 2. And again, because of that, I'm kind of starting from scratch, having to build from the bottom up.
Are you still envisioning like defined roles like this? If you take the Helms console, you will have access to these tools to add into your console. If you take the engineering, you've got access to these tools. Or are you blurring the lines a bit more between the different roles? Where if you take the Helm, you could grab the engineering controls that are specific to the Helm and put them on your console. Are you kind of envisioning that?
I'm envisioning both. I want that true flexibility for any bridge to basically put any piece of control anywhere they want for their crew, but I absolutely don't want to give up the traditional roles and the ease of use for first-time players.
Yeah, I think that's a really important balance that has to be maintained. So I wholeheartely approve, personally.
Mm. Yeah, because you can guarantee somebody's going to want to solo a ship and just put every control on there. The amount of people like, no, in the TSN, we have a minimum of 4 crew per ship. You are not soloing a ship in the TSN. But then there's other groups where they have, I think it's Wethington, who will solo a pirate ship, and he solos it really well. I bet he's going to be like, yes, I've got a console with everything and I am the master of my ship.
Well, I have to.
So,
from the beginning, I've wanted that feeling of being on a bridge where you have to rely on your bridge crew. And I've told everyone who ever asked, hey, can I play it by myself? The same answer, which is you could, but it's very lonely.
Yeah.
And I don't want to change that at all. I think that idea of you can play it by yourself, but that's not how you're supposed to play it, and that's not where you find the fun, is one of those pieces that I absolutely do not want to change.
Yeah. I mean, we definitely base our whole group on that. Like I say, we have a thing of nobody has a ship on their own. You have at least 4 crew on there. You've got your weapon, your helm, your engineer, and then you've got your science comms and captain. But ideally, we found the ideal size was 5, just because the comms with GM missions it takes a lot to keep the comms occupied. But then if we extended like the shuttle player to get 6 in there, so when we've got 5 or 6 crew on, and then obviously from that we've got 8 ships to go at, and we get the ship communication going backwards and forwards. It just having 5 ships on regularly with 5 or 6 crew on each ship. I think that for us is what makes the fun, definitely. And like you say, just on our own, if it was like 5 people on 5 different bridges, we would not have that same amount of fun.
So, moving back just a tiny bit here, talking about input from the players and all that. On the forums that you've been making some posts about various topics like engineering systems and all these things.
Yes.
Do you have like? There's been a lot of input from those. Have you made any decisions based on that input yet? And if so, what are some examples?
Yeah, I have. Not necessarily locked down code or anything, but making decisions about which direction I'm going, again, from a structural low-level point of view.
Sure.
Based on what people want. But the reason that I post on the forums like that has everything to do with this kind of thing. I've always been very honest with the players that I listen to them, I listen to their feedback, I want their feedback. Their feedback is terribly important to me, in the long run of making the game that they want. So for instance, I posted about what's in a name, talking about the names of various spaceships and stations and enemies and how they're made and why they're named that way. And and ask generally, is anybody bugged with it? Is there a better way to do it? Is it X23 or H99, or should it be HH9? Or should it be 4 letters or 10 letters? I don't know. What is everybody's opinion? And looking back and looking now, I have this whole breakdown of people saying, well, naming unnamed objects would be useful for scripting in some situations, and then other people giving me long, detailed responses about how they think the prefixes on various objects should be. And both of these things are extremely easy, are both very valuable to me, because that's exactly the thing I can not only look at in the large scale now and say, I think the trend is everybody wants more names or whatever, but then as I actually get back to that code and actually program that, I can skip back and see specific ideas people have and say, okay, I can use this right now. And so it is with things like ship names.
I think that's one of the biggest ones for us, because I ended up scripting in like a random name system into the sandbox, because we needed to spawn the ships, set all the AI up on them, and then we name them as a group and things like that. So it'd be interesting to see how like object names are handled in the new Artemis. In terms of like being able to do things, do you know the modding? Are you looking at doing it through kind of a scripting system? Because we've got the XML scripts at the moment. And last year, did you say that you were going to get the scripting system through Python?
I did, and I continue to intend to do that.
Excellent, because I've been teaching myself how to use Python.
Yeah, it was a big shout out to Doug Reichart, who, a friend of mine, a fellow engineer, who really championed Python for me. I was looking at Lua, I was looking at some other strange scripting systems, and he kept rattling my cage and saying, no, here's how you do your integration with Python. And it worked. And I tested it before. So, and I was always of the opinion that it would be generally better to have a well-tested, well-understood scripting language that a lot of people have, and that there's a lot of support for. But I had to make that decision, in 2003, 2004, for the HML system that you're using now, or the XML system that you're using now. I know it's fuzzy. I know it's no use second guessing yourself so many years after the fact. But if I had to do it over again, which I can, I would not do the XML thing again.
No. It's been like, so from my experience scripting, somebody created the mission editor program that writes the XML for you, and I think that unlocked mission scripting for me, completely unlocked it. Because at that point, like, Artemis is surprising as a game for me, because actually it's got me a lot more into coding. Before Artemis, I'd done nothing with coding, but then I've got into the mission scripting side of it, and I kind of understand the XML and how it goes together now, having looked at the way the mission editor put it together. And then I even delved into the modding side of it, where like the vessel data file and the structure of that as well. And then last year you mentioned that you were going to have the scripting system in Python, and because of the lockdown, I actually took the opportunity to go, and I think I watched a 4-hour YouTube video from Code Academy on how to write Python. Wrote a few projects, and like I've written something for work that I use in work, which is pretty cool. And I've written something for Artemis as well. So the way that the command system, the sandbox script is put together now, there's an interface that I've written in Python that people can use to be able to build it and like tailor it to what they want. So you've kind of pushed me towards doing more and more coding, which is interesting.
And it looks like not just you, there's some comments here in the chat. Angel Dust says that Artemis got him into electronics and DMX.
Yeah, I can't be more happy, guys. I mean, it's just, this is about paying it forward. I love the fact that what I created had a value to you beyond the ephemeral idea of, hey, let's play a game today.
Yeah. Oh, definitely. And like then with met people online, made friends, people I've known for years now online. Built up a proper community. So there's all that side of it. There's playing the game, and then there's everything else, like people doing DMX, people learning XML, writing it raw as well. That would be a. I don't know how they do that. Like I put it together. Then again, like the sandbox script is immense. I don't think you could write that raw. And then learning how to do Python and stuff with that. I know, Vaj, you've been doing stuff, haven't you, with creating web pages and things for us to be able to create the maps based on the sandbox and stuff like that. So, website, like I set up a community website. I'd never done that before. All these things that have kind of spun out of this one game.
Awesome.
So, yeah. Shall we delve into some more of these questions then? So, somebody's asking about like support for the languages, and is it possible? They said, are localization files going to be implemented? So Artemis 3 can be translated to other languages by the community. So in other words, are you going to open it up so that we could make like a French mod or a German mod? I know there's like a couple of French crews out there, or even like somebody linking in to one server and say we've got somebody who's from the Czech Republic having their own language version for them that could still link into the English version. Are you going to add anything like that in?
The short answer is yes. The longer answer is that it is a feature on a large stack. I know how to do it. I've done it before in other pieces of software. It never got to the top of the stack in Artemis 2. I want it to be part of Artemis 3.
Awesome. Well, Fantel, there's the answer to your question there.
Yeah.
Yeah, that would be really cool if people can have like their own language. I bet one or two people might even make Zimni consoles and stuff. I can see that happening. After those, somebody made the like language for Corellian, didn't they?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So
and Arvonian too.
Yeah. Can you imagine having an Arvonian bridge with the Arvonian language written on it?
That'd be pretty cool, actually.
All right.
So a couple more feature requests that people have asked for is stuff like key binary mapping in-game instead of using an INI file, point defense system for ships, and the ability to use copy-paste in-game.
I think that's for the IP address in particular, isn't it?
Yes, but also for the GM, perhaps, would be really nice.
Well, copy-paste is not a hard thing to implement. It's just, again, it's one of the many features on the stack. So it's a question of when and not if.
I see. Very good.
So you were saying that you were looking at releasing it towards Armada for Artemis 3, weren't you? And then are you going to be, like you've done with Artemis 2, like adding more features as you roll it out further?
Well, there's no doubt that the version of Artemis 3 that first comes out will not be the Artemis 3 that you play in 2025. That's just, there's something I've been thinking about for a long time and been talking with my closer friends about, which is the simple thing that Artemis 2 that you've been playing with is an 11-year-old piece of software. To me, as a professional game developer, that is freakish and alien. And not just because I'm an indie game developer. I spent 11 years in the video game industry, and the most years that anyone in any of my professional teams could imagine a game engine would be used for is about 4 or maybe 5 at the most. Because technology keeps moving so fast. And also because the specifications and the new game consoles come out and all this. So the whole time that I've worked in the video game industry, from I guess 92 to 2003, basically a 2-year cycle or a 3-year cycle of your code was the standard, was the norm. When I was working on All-Star Baseball for Acclaim, we had 2 years to build an engine from scratch, and then the idea was to make a baseball game come out every year using that engine, and we expected that engine just to last a few years, not to be good for the next 10 years or anything like that. And so, and of course, as an indie game developer, my experience was making a game every month, and dropping it just as quickly as I made it. So again, this idea of 10-year-old code and a code base that's supposed to serve people for 10 years is just beyond bizarre. And I've been, honestly, as a game developer and as a programmer, I've struggled with it. I don't have that experience. There are a lot of my colleagues that actually went off to banks and started programming COBOL, and they're the kind of guys who understand code that's 30 years old. I could not possibly imagine myself in that job, but also it's been really a struggle understanding, how you're supposed to program with that large time window. And the truth is that I am not in any way ready to lay Artemis down. And as a result, Artemis 3, I'm trying very hard to build as a code base that's good for the next 10 years. So that's just one of the many pieces of the puzzle that's been really challenging for me.
I know, Vaj, you had a question particularly about the engine, building on the back of that, about the PAX engine.
Yeah, so first of all, you've kind of already answered this, but I want to clarify just a little bit, because this Anderson was asking about Artemis 3's capacity for modification,
Mm-hmm.
and you definitely hinted towards that being fully intended. But do you want to elaborate a little bit on any changes to how modding would look compared to what we have now?
Well, sure. Let me break down some ideas and thoughts about that. First off, of course, it's about Python scripts instead of XML scripts. But XML scripts, as you know them in Artemis 2, are good for mission definitions, mission scripts. Python and other scripting languages can be and often are used in a lot of other ways. And my ambition, and I say ambition because I've got the Python script working, I know how to use it, but it's not in any way actually set up for any of this yet. It's still work to be done. Is that we're going to use Python for mission scripts, and in fact, basically in Artemis 2, you look on the server screen, and on the right side there's a list of fundamental things you can do: solo play, multiplayer, and the war server, and all these buttons on the right hand side. My intent, and of course one of those buttons is custom play through a script. My intent is that all those buttons are scripts.
I see.
So that scripting will become much more of a first aspect of the whole thing, and that even the basic game, in terms of, I've chosen level 6 and I'll go out and defend my bases, is just another script. At least that's the way I intend to implement it, and there's no reason I can't do it using Python. But I would also, my intent is to use Python as the brains of all of the enemy AI, and of course the monster AI as well. I had an internal brain system. If you were a scripter, you might know it as the brain stack or something like that.
Yeah, that was something that's taken years to puzzle out.
Yeah, it never worked right. It never worked quite well. It was very obtuse. I would like to replace it with more scripts. So you have you have an actual enemy ship script, and a Kralian ship script, and a Torgoth ship script.
That would be something that would be extensible and able to be added upon by custom scripts then, right?
That's the idea. Certainly, awesome. If it's a script, you guys could get your hands on it and change it to whatever you want.
So, for example, could I write like 4 different behaviors for Kralians, and then when that Kralian's created in game, it could select from one of those 4 behaviors depending on what I designate it to pick?
Sure.
Awesome. Excellent. Because like that's kind of the way that the sandbox script works at the minute. When that unit spawned in game, like of several Kralian ships, it goes and it clears out the brain stack, and then it rebuilds it with something that we want it. So if I can go in and I can create loads and loads of different AI scripts, what would be cool, I think, would be to get like everybody from the community throwing in the different scripts of, yeah, this is how a command chip's going to be behaving, and this is how the possibilities. Sorry, I want to stop.
Yep.
And the possibilities are big, but they are hidden behind the functionality of the game. Actually, there was a lot of power, theoretically at least, in the original brain stack, but ultimately ships just drove around slowly until you ran up and shot them. So sometimes we have these big ambitions, and yet it's hard for the actual user, the player, to see, oh, there's a lot of cool stuff going on behind the scenes.
Yeah,
Um,
well, yeah,
but
definitely.
but my intent anyway is to lean on Python to make the brains of enemy ships. And then another way I could use Python, that I want to use Python for, is for extensibility of the user interface.
Yes.
And then there's other opportunities going forward for Python to be used to essentially open up the functionality of the game to you guys.
Mm-hmm.
You give me like projects for the next 10 years here, so that code base last 10 years. You really are. Like the sandbox is still growing, and that's been going, what, 8 years?
Yeah.
So I'm just like looking forward to this one. One of the questions that came up was persistency. So something that we considered for this Armada was trying to make like a persistent mission script server. The sandbox kind of does that already, but it was going to be one where people could just jump on. I think this one specifically, though, like, is there a way to get a state of persistency between games being implemented by default? And it sounds like with the Python stuff that might be possible.
Well, Python's a language, and so when it comes to implementing languages, there's an internal interpreter that actually does the ifs, the ands, and the loops and things. And then there's essentially a library of functions that connect that interpreter to my code, the C++ code. And those functions can be essentially anything I want, but for obvious reasons, they're really about what the scripter wants, the power the scripter wants. If the scripter wants to create a ship, I have to write a create ship function that connects my code to your code, if you see what I'm saying.
Yes, yeah.
Great.
And so, the short answer to the idea of persistence is I can give you file load and file save functions that connect my code to your code, so that your code, your script, can store the state of the game on a hard drive and load them back in later when you restart the game. And just that just that raw ability to reach out and store and retrieve on the hard drive should give you that raw functionality you're looking for, of being able to have a persistent world. But I would like to, this is a good opportunity to bring up something that I've talked about before, which is about breaking out of the box. My intent, one of my basic goals for Artemis 3 was always to remove the box that the world, the sector, so to speak.
Yeah.
100 kilometers by 100 kilometers. And that box is, I think it's the bane of everyone's existence as a scripter and as an imaginative person who plays the game. And I can't tell you the number of people that I've heard who have found creative ways to break out of the box with warp gates and moving from sector to sector and that kind of thing. But it's always a hack, because the game Artemis 2 was locked into the box.
Yeah.
Artemis 3 was designed from the beginning not to have any box. And that has always meant that there would be changes to things like the science station. But the bottom line is that for persistency's sake, people not only want a game that lasts more than one session, they also want a game where they can truly go out and explore the universe. And I'm very excited to give them both of those things.
That's going to be fascinating, because like we've got, I mean, what was the last count? We've got like 30 or 40 different kind of sectors, we call them, but then within them we've got like 9 or 10 different maps that go in them that just gives us tons of different sectors to explore. But like you say, it's always been a hack going from one to the next. Say that again, Raj.
We have 50 systems by my count.
50 systems, alright, okay. And each system has got, what, say on average 10?
Yep, probably about 10.
So we've got like 500 different sector maps. It's mental how much we've got. But that, I wonder how that would look when we get into this like open space that just goes on forever. Especially from like a scripting point of view. I wonder how I'm going to build those maps. That's going to be interesting.
Yeah, I think there's a lot of things that depend on how, you know, all the scripting language turns out and how things are implemented.
Well, and it's a dialogue. The answer is it's a dialogue. I am going to be making these systems, and you guys are going to be saying, I need these 3 extra functions.
Yeah.
Because that's
Just 3?
My vision. No, 3 this week.
Yeah.
3 today. I think one of the important questions is, because this code's so old, it can run on quite a lot of machines. You know, you don't have to necessarily have a really high spec machine to run it on. And I think some of the cloud servers that we run it on are some of the basic cloud servers, aren't they? Like the Donovan has the AWS server that we run on with basic graphics on there. But what kind of minimum specs or recommended specs are you thinking? Is there anything along those? Along that line that you could tell us about it?
Well, I always said that there weren't that many specs for Artemis 2, but I did rely on DirectX 9 and Shader Model 2.0. And I can similarly report that my current engine, my PAX engine, will run on DirectX 11 and Shader Model 5.0. And of course, those are hard numbers to really pry out of, you know, the basic specs for any computer. But I would have to say, you know, Windows 10. Windows 10 is really all you need. And I think it'll go back to Windows 8, but it will not go back to Windows 7.
So probably not Windows 98 then. There was someone who was trying to run Artemis 2 on Windows 98 and it wasn't working. And that's
there's always an old computer out there.
Yeah,
you know,
true enough.
At some point, because again, I had to think about the next 10 years.
Yeah.
Great.
On that vein, I know a lot of people want to run it on other systems as well. Like, is it Mac OS and Linux and things like that? Is Artemis going to be able to run on those different operating systems?
The short answer is sure, probably. In Artemis 2, I had written a whole lot of code that was terribly not portable, that was terribly not well written, and as a result, to find a way to make Artemis for other platforms, which turned out to be mobile devices, I reached out to a subcontractor named Max Gaming, and Tim Newell over there, who's a programmer for that kind of thing, helped me out, but it weren't cheap. And I would say after the first time that he did a port to iOS and Android, each actual update to iOS and Android was costing me about $9,000. And that was completely unsustainable considering how little the Apple version of the game made me, and in fact the Android version made me 1/10 of that. So it was not at all cost sustainable.
Yeah, I know a couple of people I saw on the forums every so often were like, oh, we're going to get an update to the Apple version, we're going to get an update to the Android version, and understanding like that there's an underlying cost to that. It's not as easy as, yeah, I'll just very quickly type something up and there you go. That actually it's costing a lot of money for that kind of development. It's just I think that's an interesting perspective that people might not have considered before using those systems.
And I can't say that they're wrong to ask and say what's going on, because obviously, again, I I slapped together the very first version of Artemis back in 2010. I did not have a thought in my head for moving the game between platforms. This PAX engine that I'm using now was specifically designed for platform agility. Having said that, I have not done a lot of that. I have not actually taken PAX and tried to get it to run on other platforms. So it's not a guarantee. But what I have attempted to do with my redesign from the code from the ground up is make it much easier and therefore theoretically much cheaper to do platform ports. And so in the future, I will do platform ports, but I haven't even tried yet.
Right.
No, that's fair.
Well, I'm sure there are plenty of people out there who have different platforms that'd be happy to help test. But I suppose that when it comes to testing as well, I know people are like, yeah, we'll test it for you. But I imagine that's a little bit hard, easier said than done, as it were, for like giving you good feedback testing wise, especially if we're doing it over the internet.
Yes and no. I mean, it generally is hard to get good feedback from that way. On the other hand, I have a singular fan base. You guys are awesome about helping me with exactly that kind of thing.
So speaking of internet play, given COVID and everything, has that made you want to design Artemis 3 to be more available, I guess, for Artemis play, more built for it? And kind of in that vein, something that I thought it was, what if there was a built-in voice system for comms between ships to communicate with each other? Is that something you've considered?
Well, that's two questions. And the first one is,
Yes.
yeah, absolutely, I want to make it so that as many people can enjoy the game as possible. And I've always known that one of the kind of subgroups of Artemis fans were online players. So I want to cater to them as well as the other subgroups. And will continue to do so. And again, that's through the user interface, through the changeover to the eNet network layer, and so on. I'm trying to make sure that the game can be played over the internet easily and quickly and without any trouble. As far as voice chat goes, that is such another kettle of fish, because there's so much work that got done in all the other cool voice chat features. There's so much technology that's behind the scenes in the Discord chat that you and I are chatting on right now. My only real hope for that would be, some sort of package deal. But unfortunately, more and more in the world, the package deals are all wrapped up in the big engines like Unity and Unreal. It's often the case that I'll look at a library and it'll be a library that does amazing things, but when I look at it a little more closely, it can't integrate with my little engine. It's only for Unity. And if I were to ask why not, they would say Unity's the only game in town that we care about. So unless I use Unity, then that feature is not going to be available to me. So I guess what I'm saying is that no, I think that it's not realistic to imagine that I'll do integrated voice chat anytime soon with Artemis 3.
No, that's fair.
There are, like you say, there's different packages out there that can be used. Discord, and we use a TeamSpeak server as well, pretty much exclusively for our games, which serves enough of a purpose for communicating for Artemis, I suppose. And if you're catering for so many different groups, like in-person groups and online groups, then you don't want to be, I suppose, ploughing loads of effort into just one subgroup, and I don't think like from my point of view, I wouldn't expect you to plough loads of effort in just for us, because I'm aware that there's many other groups out there and many other players out there that don't play online.
Well, I know that there's lots of different sorts of players that play Artemis, and I want to make sure that I give attention to all of them.
Yeah. Somebody did ask, with the modability stuff where you can change consoles, is there going to be some kind of set standard for like convention groups? Somebody mentioned that in the live chat earlier. Or is it going to be that each convention might end up, like, would you be able to set it up and sit down and recognise, right, this is Artemis, this is the Helms console? Or, I suppose, like a default option?
There will be a default option. I want there to be a default option. I can tell you right now, from my experience, that the convention groups love customizability. And if I can give them the ability to turn Artemis at their convention setup into something unrecognizable, they probably will take that opportunity.
Yeah, so Arbitrary Sketch just posted, will Artemis be ported to tic-tac-toe boards? Which I think is...
Well, more likely is that, you know, you would say, as you're in your example, you would go to Phoenix and the big Phoenix Comic-Con and sit down at what you know is an Artemis station, and it looks nothing like Artemis as far as you know. And you know, if I give you guys the flexibility that I could give you, I can't stop those those operators from doing exactly that, and I know they'll want to.
Sure, yeah. So it is towards the end of our live stream time period. We do have a scheduled event which is starting about now.
Well,
we certainly can keep going, I think. What's that?
That's a shame, because I had some.
Well.
Yeah.
I definitely want to keep this going. I know that there are people who might be jumping off the campaign finale, and I know Gary was asking, would you want to join us? But I'm quite happy to keep this live stream going on longer, as long as you are, Tom. I don't mind.
Well, I probably have another 20-30 minutes.
Awesome. So you did have some stuff to show us. This is gonna, like, Garion's gonna go mad now.
Yeah, actually.
Sorry, Garion.
Would you rather that we broke this and started another stream just so that you can record it separately, or should we just plow through and
let's plow through? I am because this stream as well is being recorded, so anybody that drops out and comes back on will be able to see the rest of it, and I'm more than happy to keep going.
Yep.
So
let me actually start screen sharing.
Definitely.
Yeah.
All right, so I've got this set up on my end. Tom's gonna start. Gary's saying keep going.
Right.
I think it is gonna be more than worth it. Plow through Echo 2, Echo 2. All right, let me see if I've got mine set up. So, hang on a second. I'm gonna fade across. We need like a drum roll. Somebody had a drum roll earlier. All right, so here we go. Badge, where's my drum roll? Come on.
I don't have drum roll, sorry.
Oh, jeez. You know.
And you have decided that you're not going to use Artemis 3 as the name for this, correct? Even though that is what's shown here.
I did want to make sure that everyone understood how much of a ground-up rewrite the game was.
Uh-huh.
How fundamentally I had completely rewritten everything. So I'm exploring ideas for different names that would help people understand that this is not just a simple continuation or modification of the Artemis 2 code. You know, I want people to understand. So I've been kicking around ideas like Artemis Cosmos or Artemis Neo or Artemis something. But I still haven't really locked down on one particular name.
My headset keeps beeping at me. I think it might be running out of battery. Oh dear.
Uh-oh.
All right, okay, so the graphics are on the screen so people can see it now.
So, well then, can I just drive around a bit and talk about what is going on?
Let's go for it.
All right, I'm going to start the server, and the user interface that's on the server really belongs on the client right now, and the client is separate and does work much like Artemis 2. But I'm just going to show you the server screen right now in this kind of test phase. I've got basic helm controls here, so I can drive around, stop, even reverse. And you can see that I have, you know, some position information on the top, and again, helm controls. And here I've got this little radar. So that's, this is, proof that the actual engine is running and there's actual player spaceship, a line of asteroids, and over here on the right, past the asteroids, is a couple of enemies. They don't actually do anything except sit there, but they do have shields that also don't actually do anything, but they're there. This is a new rendering of shader that does actual what do you call it, normal mapping, which Artemis never did. So hopefully, obviously things will be a little prettier from that point of view. They'll be a lot prettier in terms of, resolution and particles and things. So speaking of particles and things, I would like to talk to you about the fact that around Christmas time, I found online a guy who'd made a beautiful nebula shader. I reached out and actually connected with him. His name's Wes Bakane, and he's a nice guy. He's a good coder. So we got to talking, and I actually paid him to put his beautiful nebulas into my game. And that actually has been something that we've been doing all winter. And, the result you see in this blue nebula in front of you. Now, nebulas weren't horrible in Artemis 2, but his nebulas I thought were just spectacular in comparison, especially as you move through them. So I wanted that, and we got the integration successfully in the game fairly recently, just in the last few days. As I drive through this nebula, you can see that
Nice.
the nebula is fully interactive, beautiful, and
that's awesome.
Ribbon and very, very gaseous and very, very, very Wrath of Khan is what I wanted, and his stuff was absolutely
Wrath of Khan, we're going with that one, definitely.
well, the Mutaran Nebula. Wow. So I loved it. Anyway, so, I paid the man. He gave me some really good nebula code so that we can all enjoy these beautiful procedural voxel nebulas
Nice.
in Artemis. So, and incidentally, of course, the engine trail created by this by my spaceship here that actually just dropped off because I got too far away from the thing is also Wes. Wes actually went back and optimized my particles so that we could have like 100 times more particles on the screen at once. And that will hopefully make the whole game even prettier too. So that's at any rate. So yeah, big shout out to Wes. He's responsible for these nebulas and these cool particles. And even though you can't see them on the screen, he threw in some planets for free.
Some planets. Oh, that was a controversial subject back and forth on the forums. I saw that one.
Right? So Wes did indeed write me some planet code because he was like, yeah, I have some lying around and it's easier than nebula code. It's all gas giants right now, but if people like, I can get Wes to make more different kinds of planets and we can put them into the game more meaningfully.
Is that something that could be modded? Like, could players like add new types of planets and such?
I'm going to explore that. Wes's stuff is very procedural and very low-level shadery stuff. The complex math that happens entirely on the video card, so that it can be a beautiful, perfectly spherical world and still run at a great frame rate. At the very least, I can give scripters the ability to twiddle the numbers and the knobs to get lots of different, results from whatever Wes creates for me.
Gotcha.
So, well, I think that's definitely if we can tweak bits here and there, I'm sure we will tweak them to the nth degree and come up with some really lots of variation.
Yeah, and that's certainly what I hope everybody would do and be excited about. But there's one more thing, one big part of this that I want to show, and that's the laser beams. Again,
Ooh.
because this is a work in progress, what I need to do actually is create a client and log on with the 2D weapons system, only so that I can actually lock on to an enemy.
Ooh. Oh, cool.
So the beam range is a little high, so we're shooting him even from here, but I'm going to drive forward so that you can see a little bit more
That
special
looks
effects.
so cool.
Thank you. I've worked hard
Yeah,
on
that
it.
looks awesome.
So one of the things you're seeing, of course, is point lights. There are lights for every beam impact on the enemy ship, and also lights from every emitter on the front of your ship.
Wow.
Another thing,
Yeah.
blue and white is just the particles themselves, and then it's a little hard to tell from this angle, but the red things are actually the shields. The shields
yeah.
are no longer perfectly spherical. They're designed. So, well, actually, I have only shields on the front of the ship. So now that we're in the back of the ship, the beams are actually tracing along the actual hull of the ship.
So can we see what the client looks like right now?
It doesn't look like much of anything. It basically looks like a
Fair enough.
So,
Yeah, because somebody was like, "Show me the weapons console. Show me the weapons console." I don't think there's much there yet.
And I can tell you right now, all of these consoles, the weapon console, the helm console, the science console, and stuff, are in their infancy.
Yeah.
I have a long way to go to make them pretty, but that's just one more piece that I still have to kind of bring up. And so I'm going to drive around here.
Could see
So
some of
kind
the
of
like
question real quick
Go on.
is will it continue to be a mostly 2D environment?
Okay, so yes and no is the short answer. The long answer is that I have programmed in the 3D environment at the ground level now with this engine. So any ship, any object can go in any direction and any orientation. That's just built in. Having said that, I still think very much as a game designer that the best choice for everybody is kind of operate as though it were on a plane.
Yeah.
Remember, I was telling you that there's going to be a default user interface.
Yeah.
There will also be a default that kind of turns on these guardrails and kind of forces ships to stay in the plane. Not a hard force, but a soft force, kind of keep you in the plane unless you try hard unless you try hard to go up or down. But that's the limit of it. And then of course that'll be a feature you can just turn off. So their interface complexity, as we all know, from going too high or too low.
Yeah.
But the short answer of Artemis is it's more 3D than ever.
Yeah. Cool. That's going to be interesting because, like, I mean, when you watch Star Trek, it's all on the same level. There's one ship approaches the other. It's the same orientation. It's the same level. So you've got that kind of side of it. I think concept-wise, to try and handle it in your head as well is definitely a lot easier than trying to go at all sorts of different angles and things. But I can see if a couple of Helms officers wanting to just, like, they'll be doing some crazy maneuvers and...
Yeah. So you can see from here that there's a shield splash that doesn't hit the ship. And the shield itself is wrapped around the ship. It's like a kind of a loose wrapper.
Yeah. So instead of like the spherical dome that we've got at the minute. Is that the same on the Artemis then? If they shot back, we will get like this. Cool.
Yeah, every shielded ship will have this kind of wrapper around it.
Is that based on the model somehow?
Yes, it is. It's directly based on the model. It's a procedural kind of chunky I wrote a while ago. So, and I want the splashes to look better, and this is still very much a work in progress, but you can see what I've been doing here. So I want to share one more thing that I think is important to share about all of this, and that is that, I've told you before, I want customizability in the user interface.
Amen to that.
Not the most perfect example of it, but I want to show you that the way I chose to implement it, and it's still very much in kind of like in flux and not finished, is simple and under the thing. So I'm going to hold down the control key on my keyboard, and now I've got controls for the user interface.
Yes, this is awesome.
Here, and I'm like, oh no, I want this back in the corner, so I'll push this user interface back into the corner.
Oh man.
That's for every user interface. So
I
my
love it.
radar can be smaller or bigger
That's
as
cool.
necessary. I want the, I want a big radar or something. These numbers are kind of like, I don't necessarily need it to be that. So I'd rather have the numbers down here in the upper right corner. So, I'll put the numbers down there, all while holding down the control key. So
The live chat's just gone mental.
the user interface itself still needs a great deal of work to look pretty. And of course,
Sure.
each of these individual boxes needs extra programming to deal with the fact that it's going to have to look pretty in lots of different dimensions. But that's work I can do. But more, and a little added bonus of all this is this was a very encapsulated system I wrote a few months ago that actually automatically stores and recovers from disk. So,
Arian, that answers your question. There you go.
It's already the case that if I close this and then come back to it, it keeps all of these positions. And all
Very
persistent
nice.
from your last usage then. So can you have like different like user setups and like load a different layout kind of thing? Is that something you're planning on added?
That's certainly the intention.
Awesome.
So in fact, my kind of vision is that we have our default set of standard controls, but then we have the option to go ahead and add a bunch of custom controls to the bottom, and then choose the custom control as we want or need.
Oh, I'm gonna have so much fun with this. Is there a way for it to be like predefined mission side? So through the mission script, I could say, right, you are on a freighter, and this is the controls on the freighter and what it's going to have to look like. Or right, you're on an Artemis class and you've got the full customizability.
You guys can help me with that. I mean, it really, as well as I do, that it comes down to the collision between what the scripter wants and what the individual player wants.
True.
Working out that collision is something I could really use your help with.
Well, I think Xavier and I, at the very least, can say we are happy to help.
Yeah.
I'm sure there's tons of other people who would concur.
All right. Well, obviously, I've done a lot of work, and yet I've got a lot more work to do. So I'm hoping that I can keep the communication door open.
Yeah, well, definitely. So when I suppose one of the questions that I put down is put a question mark next to it because I didn't know it was me. When are you planning on running the next live Armada? And I'm asking this deliberately. This is a loaded question because I know that you are planning on having a version of this ready for that Armada.
Well, I mean, planning would be too strong a word. I would love to have something that people can play at the next Armada. But I mean, the Armada hasn't existed precisely because of one thing, and that's COVID.
Mm-hmm.
So I think I and basically everybody else in the world is very cognizant about safety and vaccines and thoughts about when it can be done and how it should be done. And I have an entire con committee that's helping me wrestle with that right now. Frankly, I miss Armada so much, and I think if there's a way you guys can do it live in England, you should absolutely do it because it's a singular experience.
Yeah.
But I want it to happen as soon as possible, but it's still one of those things where we're just not sure what the next few months is going to do. We're still not exactly sure where we're going to be in the fall or next spring.
But you're definitely intending on having another Armada coming up when we're able to.
Yeah.
I think there's a few people saying they are they're missing the Armada and they're missing meeting you there in person as well and getting to chat to you. I know there's the opportunity to sit down and talk to you there and just people quiz you over it endlessly, I think.
Well, it's always wonderful to see everybody at Armada.
Yep. That's a good time.
There's a couple more questions. How long have you got left, Thom?
I probably better get off by 3:30 in another 9 minutes.
All right, okay. Do you have any additional planning for version 2, fixing any bugs or addressing any issues or adding anything to it in version 2, or is that kind of now on the back burner and Artemis 3 is all go?
Um, it's especially throughout the incredibly dim winter months here in Ohio. It's been tough writing code of any kind.
Mm.
Hmm.
And so I wish I'd been further along in Artemis 3, honestly. Um, Artemis 2, of course, now, as we've talked about, is ancient, stinky code as far as I'm concerned. But that doesn't mean that you guys don't deserve updates. So I think that that's, again, a dialogue. I think that we should get on the forums. We should talk about update possibilities. We should talk about, what are the top 10 things that really should be addressed. And, if we put it together that way, I could probably find time to budget to work on that code.
Okay.
Fair enough. And then one other question, I think. Are you working on any other projects in the background as well? Because I know you've had, like you said, you've had lots of little games that you've done as well as a creative game developer, and that creative kind of side of it. You work on all sorts of bits. Are you working on other bits at the moment, or are you just, is it to kind of getting all? Well,
generally speaking, the answer is yeah, I'm always working on something. And it's usually some weird little side project that ignites my muse. But again, this winter's been difficult. So I haven't done nearly as much code as, I hope to do in the future.
Adam was asking a couple of things about Artemis 3. First of all, will the war server be coming back?
What I would hope is that the new kind of expanded borderless universe and the more powerful scripting system and the more openness in terms of the network layer can all combine so that we could essentially script the war server and forget about some special war mode.
Ooh,
Gotcha.
So
like
we could have someone at point 2,500 and somebody at point minus 2,500, and they'd still be on the same server.
Yeah, absolutely.
Or even further.
Absolutely.
Whoa, Vaj, we could dispatch battle groups to areas to do. Oh wow.
Yes. Yeah. I see the implications there. I do wonder if there will be limitations, though, to how far ships can be apart from each other, though, and still be
2 million
easily handled on the server. You know what I mean?
Yeah, well, I mean, it's the problem, of course, with that comes back to the user interface of the science station, which has to change in this new thing because there's no more box. And the science station was basically the heart of what became the Game Master mode.
Right.
So we have to now rethink the Game Master mode because the Game Master mode also cannot see everything all at once.
Right. I have many thoughts on the Game Master mode. I would love to sit down and talk with you just one-on-one about that if you have time sometime, by the way.
Yeah.
Let's DM and work it out.
Definitely.
Yeah,
definitely.
we'll do.
All right. So I know that you wanted to wrap it up there. It is 25 past, so I think we're going to bring it to a close there. Thank you so much for joining us there. The live chat, I think, was interesting to watch. People were very, very excited about what they've seen here, and obviously seeing the game demo going on in the background. It's a teaser and a half, is that one?
Well, again, I've got a lot of work, and I have a lot of work yet to do.
And we are so looking forward to seeing how that work progresses and
so much.
Yeah, and seeing how it develops and seeing a release as well. We are looking forward to that. I think we'll wrap it up there. Thank you so much, Thom, for giving up your time and coming online and talking to us. And thank you to the community for the questions and the live chat as well. And I think our next scheduled event is the next campaign mission. So you are welcome to join us if you've got time. I know you're saying you were going to shoot off now, but...
yeah, I'm sorry, but I do have other appointments.
Busy schedule.
Thank you again so much for giving me the opportunity to chat everybody.
Absolutely. All right. Thanks very much.
All right. Bye-bye.
Bye, Thom.
Okay, see you guys. Well, we're still live at the moment, Vaj. That was a good one. I'm just sat here with my mind racing with all sorts of possibilities of, we could do this and we could do that, and what's it going to be like when we get our hands on that? I mean, some of the stuff that we do already with Artemis 2.0, Artemis 3.0 is going to open up a whole load more doors.
Yep.
And the TSN will continue for another 10 years.
Oh, man.
Alright, so I think we're going to wrap it up there so that Garion can do his Armada campaign finale. He's got a big finale planned. I think there's going to be lots of battling going on, so make sure you jump on the TeamSpeak server, join us with that. Garion's be looking forward to this one, I think, and we will name idea Artemis 3D. And we will see you in our next broadcast. I don't know when our next broadcast is, our scheduled one. I've not really been broadcasting the Armada ones, the campaign ones. Let's see, what have we got? So our next one, we've got the Armada campaign. That's the finale. We've got the race finale. We did have the mission scripting competition, but if you were looking for that, we did that earlier. But you can watch it back. And we'll be doing more Game Master games and then signing off about 2300 UTC. So thanks for joining us on the stream. I think it's been the most popular stream that I've run so far.
Probably with good reason. Yeah. With very good reason.
And we'll see you next time.